Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my podcast, Breaking Stereotypes. In this new series starting today, we are going to be looking into the treatment and portrayal of female sex workers in crime TV shows. I think this is going to be a super eye-opening series, especially given the rising popularity of the relatively new adult website OnlyFans, which has made huge changes in the sex work industry. Just as I stated in previous series and episodes that people's identities are not solely based on their gender, race, sexual orientation, or religion, people are also not solely defined by their jobs, and this is no different for those who are in the field of sex work. Now, with that being said, let's dive into the first show we're going to be reviewing today, which is Law & Order Special Victims Unit. This is one of my top 5 favorite shows of all time, so I'm really excited to be looking into this with all of you today. Now, not every episode of SVU is about sex workers, but there are multiple episodes that feature women who are prostitutes or involved in other sex work. So let's dive in and take a look at how this show chooses to portray them. In the episodes of this show that do feature females in sex work, I think that there are both positive and negative aspects in regards to how these characters are presented. We'll start by discussing the ways that these characters were all dressed. I think this is one main area that the portrayal of these women in this show has fallen short on and still seems very dated. Almost every single female prostitute character in SVU is wearing virtually some version of the same getup. Tall high heels, big hoop earrings, heavy makeup, tight, short, revealing clothing, and sometimes big fur coats if the episodes happen to take place in the winter. To me, this is a very classical, stereotypical description of how people think prostitutes look, and this show does not stray far from that stereotype. While there is nothing inherently wrong with this type of outfit, and I think that women should feel empowered to dress in whatever makes them feel confident and good about themselves, this stereotype about the way that prostitutes dress can convey the image that they are sluts or whores and that there is nothing more to them than that. In my humble opinion, I think if the show were to depict these women in a different variety of outfits, including what they would wear when not working, it would help to show that these women are still people and that being a prostitute is not the only part of them that defines their identity. Now, on the flip side, I get to hype up this favorite show of mine because I do think there are some ways in which this show portrays these women in a positive light that could really help people see that these are still real women who live real lives regardless of what they do to make a living. One particular episode that I think does a great job at this is the season 14, episode 9, called Dreams Deferred, which I highly recommend you give a watch if you haven't already. This episode is about an older prostitute named Janine who goes missing when a man she used to be involved with goes on a rampant killing spree across New York City. The detectives of the SVU squad have to then convince the New York Police Department that Janine's life is worth saving, despite her line of work and her history. The NYPD was not overly eager to help Janine because she had been previously arrested for drug possession and prostitution, which was something that they did not value highly and worthy of saving. The SVU detectives push for them to adopt views that are focused around rehabilitation rather than judgment and simply throwing women like Janine in jail. Now, spoiler alert ahead, but in the end, they are able to rescue Janine and get her into a program that would assist her in overcoming her struggles and rebuilding a healthier life rather than just locking her back up in jail. I think it is so important that this episode highlighted the necessity and the value that rehabilitation can have over punishment. Now, don't get me wrong, I know the law is the law. However, that does not justify the mistreatment of someone simply because they are involved in sex work. I think many people hear about prostitutes and believe that they are beyond help. However, I think a shift towards wanting to help them would not only be beneficial for these women physically, but also emotionally, because I think this would greatly help change people's perceptions of these women to a more compassionate and understanding one. By this episode focusing on rehab for Janine, the viewers are able to see that she is still a human being who deserves to be helped and cared for just like any other person. Our society thinks that a businessman who does blow every single weekend deserves more help than a person in sex work who does the same thing purely just based on their professions. I think that by having more shows like this that focus on portraying these women as real people who are still deserving of our care and help could start to shift away from those negative stereotypes of women in sex work. Well, with all this being said, it's officially time for us to move on to my very professional and official rating of the show and how it depicts these minorities, in this case, obviously being women in sex work. Drum roll, please. My official rating is an 8 out of 10. Overall, I think SVU does a fairly good job of portraying prostitutes as real women who should not only be defined by their work, but I do think there are still some stereotypes that could be overcome, such as how they dress, and the depictions of many of them having some sort of substance abuse issue. SVU, you're off to a great start in this area, but I know you could do even better. So keep up the work and keep pushing to make a difference for women in this line of work. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in again. I'll talk to you next week when we look into some episodes of the show Criminal Minds. Take it easy, everyone.